This is the FCB Radio Network, home of the best personalities and where real talk lives. Online at fcbradio.com. FCB.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. I am your host, of course, Kira Davis. And this is the podcast where we ask you to take talking points on hot topics and hot button issues and draw those talking points out all the way to their logical conclusion. Because I believe when we take the time to actually examine our talking points, sometimes we're not saying what we think we are. So this is an exercise in, all together now, critical thinking and what? Persuasion. So let's get into it today without further delay, because today's going to be more of a train of thought episode. Some of you guys who have been with the show now since the beginning know that some of my shows are pretty concise and laid out, and I have my points and my research, and some shows are me kind of thinking through an issue. And this is one of those shows, because the topic doesn't really require a lot of facts or figures or things like that, a lot of research. So bear with me. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to flow through this, but it's something that I've been rolling around in my mind really for quite a while now. But it came to a head with this Meghan Markle Prince Harry interview and the reactions to it from both the media and those who watched the show. So I thought now is the time to do this episode. So I want to talk about the idea of the nobility of race and what it means, what it doesn't mean, how we're using it today. I think that we've made race an idol. And watching the reaction to that interview with Oprah really brought home this topic for me. Because I think that besides, like I said, making race an idol, we have overcorrected our failures on race to the point now where we've made race kind of this unassailable element to humanity. And I think it's dangerous for all of us, not just for Black people or white people or Asian people, like just for all of us in civilized society. I think what we're doing right now is very dangerous. It has very deep consequences, specifically for our young women. And I'm going to explain that as we move further in this discussion. But just to put a cap on this, to recap this, because not everybody knows exactly what happened in that interview and what the big deal is. I know a lot of you have been complaining. I mean, come on, guys. It's not an original thought anymore. If you want to criticize people for enjoying watching the royal family, I don't need to see 40,000 tweets from people going, didn't we fight a war 250 years ago so we didn't need to care about these people? Why are conservatives so sour about everything? You guys, why do you have to be so sour about people finding enjoyment in the misery of others? I like watching rich folks' problems. I know that we're not a monarchy. We don't want to be a monarchy. I'm just enjoying these rich white people have ridiculous issues. Every little girl loves the idea of a prince and a princess and a castle and all of that. So just because we enjoy watching these people and enjoy their fashions or their charity work or their ridiculous problems doesn't mean that we're saying they're important to us as how we run our country. These are the same people who always have to tell you every Oscar season that they're not watching the Oscars because everything in Hollywood is garbage. All right, fair enough. A lot in Hollywood is garbage. And maybe you just don't feel like wasting your time with it. But you don't need to look down your nose at other people who do. Don't forget that, when the culture is abandoned, look what happened. Look what happened when we abandoned the culture because it was so beneath us. Now we have no stake in the culture at all. So don't mock people for enjoying the culture as it is, or at least getting some kind of entertainment out of it. If you're not watching the Oscars, great, don't watch the Oscars. If you find, I don't watch the Oscars. I do. I find them very painful. I find them very hypocritical. And I know, we all know now what a scam all of the award season is. That's all rigged from the start. We all know this now. But I surely do love watching that red carpet. I do. And I watch the clips the next day so I can comment, and it's fine, folks. It's okay. We can enjoy certain aspects of this strange society we live in and still be serious people, right? All right, good. Are we on the same page with that? So Meghan Markle and Prince Harry did this tell-all interview with Oprah from their mansion, and they made some pretty bold accusations. Basically, just in a nutshell, I don't have time to parse it all out for you. But if you want to go find the clips of the interview or watch the interview, go do that. But basically, in a nutshell, what they were saying was that the royal family was racist towards Meghan, that they had conversations about how dark the baby would be and, quote, what that would mean for the crown, and that she was treated poorly because of her race, and that they felt trapped, that they were trapped in the lifestyle, and that they had to leave because the racism was so bad, and that she became suicidal at one point during her pregnancy and had no one to turn to get help because everyone was, quote, against her. And there's a lot of folks that have a lot of thoughts on whether or not Meghan was, telling the truth about all of that. And I'll render my opinion on all that down the road. What I'm most interested in was the reaction, because the reaction seemed to be split. There were a lot of people who were like, I don't believe any of this. These guys are they need the money. They sat down for millions of dollars, and they're just trying to figure out their way back into celebrity life in America. But there are many more who were like, oh my gosh, whatever Meghan said, we have to take as gospel truth. And if you criticize it at all, you are a racist. So Piers Morgan lost his job. He's like a very popular British commentator. And even here in the US, we know who he is. He lost his job because he questioned the truthfulness of her narrative. He said, if you're going to make accusations if you're going to call the Queen a racist, come with some receipts. I guess you can tell how I already feel about this. I kind of agree with everything that Piers said, but it is not, my show today isn't about what I think of that interview. So I just want to make that clear. But what he said was, if you're going to accuse the Queen, you need to come with some receipts. That's a very serious accusation, especially these days. Calling someone a racist, threatening the reputation of someone with that label with no proof. Yeah, that's a very serious accusation. So she didn't really have any proof. She didn't name any names, and Oprah didn't really press her on any points. So Piers is saying, if we're being asked to believe that the royal family of Great Britain is a bunch of racists, then we at least need to have a little bit to go on, have something, a name even, an incident, a specific date, anything. And he was fired for that. Not just fired, but then his outlet had to make this huge apology, this huge mea culpa. Oh, we don't tolerate this type of hate. We don't tolerate this type of ignorance. And I thought, well, this is strange. All he was doing was rendering an opinion on a very well-known interview. And then I turned to Twitter and I saw that a gentleman who has written for Premier Christianity magazine, which is a UK magazine, and their podcast network airs my favorite podcast, which is Unbelievable, with Justin Brierley. And I used Justin's apology video last week to get through the subject of confirmation bias. And so this guy, David Robertson, writes for them occasionally. And so they asked him to write an op-ed on the Markle interview, which he did. And he was also critical of some of the assertions that were made, and he was fired. And they took the article down, and they made this was like the apology read as if he had called her the N-word. They printed this retraction. We have now removed this article and would like to unreservedly apologize for it, for the offense and hurt it caused and the damage it has done to the witness of Christians. We were wrong to publish it. Although we initially only apologized for one phrase within the piece, we now understand the problems with the blog were far wider than one phrase. It was not a helpful piece of commentary, but instead has resulted in understandable anger and pain, especially for those who have experienced racism. Good Lord. Do you know what the one phrase he said was, he said she played the race card. And they didn't like that. Now, you know what? Let's assume that they're right about him, about David Robertson, and he had nefarious reasons for writing this. Let's assume that he really doesn't like Meghan Markle because of her race, which I do not believe at all. But let's just assume that. Why is he not allowed to say, I think that this is the case from this interview? Why? See, now we have made even the softest criticism of anyone who is not white, we have turned that into racism. And in effect, we are erasing racism by doing that, because it's not racist. Racism isn't criticizing someone. Do you guys know how different my life would be if I grew up in an area in Canada where people just sort of softly criticized me for being black? I would be a totally different person. Maybe not even the kind of person that you would listen to on a show like this, because it is our traumatic experiences that really shape us and sharpen us. So maybe I wouldn't even be this person, but I sure as hell would not be complaining about the racism I've experienced in my life if the, quote, racism I came up against was people saying, oh, Kira, maybe you shouldn't play the race card so much. Or just being rude to me and I just happen to be black. If that's racism, I'll take that 5 days out of the week and then 6 times on Saturday and Sunday. You know what I'm saying? I'll take it. It really frightens me that we have come to this point where we have done the opposite of what we said needed to happen in order to promote racial healing in our country and across the globe, which is make sure that everybody's voice is counted and make sure that everybody is respected, that everybody has the same God-given rights and access to those God-given rights. And instead, we've just completely swung over to the other extreme, where we had one group of people whose voice didn't count, who weren't even considered human beings. And now we've swung all the way over to the other extreme, where they are the only voices that seem to count. And they are the only voices that matter. And they are the only people whose rights we need to worry about. What about the right of people to just have an opinion about something that is in the public square? To lose your job over criticizing a rich member of the royal family, it's unthinkable. It's crazy to me that we have gotten so far, and this is extremely dangerous. I may not even agree with all of this man's opinions or Piers Morgan's opinions. I may not agree with every other liberal or conservative out there on any given subject, but that is no reason to push those opinions out of the public square. How do we have a discussion if one whole side of the discussion is gone? I was really disappointed in Premier Christianity for bending the knee like that to the woke schools. This man did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. He criticized her. I might disagree with some of the things he said. I didn't read the whole thing, so I don't know. But he still has every right to say it, and they asked him to write the column. They should have put the words in his mouth. What did they think he was going to say? He's a British subject, and she came out and criticized the royal family as racist. What did they think he was going to say? It's not Meghan Markle that I want to talk about. I don't really care about I mean, I do. I care about her and Harry, and I have opinions. I do. But it's not about her. But it is about the idea that once she dropped that race card, as this writer called it, and as I'll call it, once she dropped it, then it was like, oh, all bets are off. Now we absolutely cannot criticize her publicly because she has this nobility of race now. It's not just her. We do this all over. I'm watching professors lose tenure and CEOs lose their position. I'm watching people get fired, people get let go, products removing their sponsorships from certain athletes or musicians. What was that one musician, that guy that came out the other day? I don't even know, because his name sounds like Wynton Marsalis, and that's what I think of. Wynton Marsalis is a jazz artist, but this guy's like folk or country. But anyway, he had the nerve to simply tweet at Andy Ngo, who is Andy Ngo, Ngo, who is a reporter. He's been on the Antifa beat forever. I love your book, dude. Brave book. Andy wrote a book about, he's had to leave the country because he's had threats against his life because of his reporting on Antifa and the riots over the summer. And so he tweeted like, oh, congrats on the book. It was a brave book. That guy had to come out, issue a full apology, and tell people that he was going to go and re-examine his biases. How creepy is that? All he did was congratulate a guy on a book he wrote and said it was a brave book. And it wasn't Mein Kampf, by the way, which is still available wherever you want to get your books. It wasn't Mein Kampf. It was a book about how he reported on the riots over the summer, what he saw and what it meant to his life. But because Andy Ngo has a false reputation of being an extremist right-wing author, which is completely false, he is not. It's completely false. But he has, because he reports honestly on things like Antifa and the riots, the Black Lives Matter riots through the summer. And before that, he would report honestly on like transgender violence, and he would investigate those cases, and people didn't like the results of his investigations. And so they just labeled him right wing, but he's not. But this guy, now this musician who did nothing but tweet, has to go to re-education camp. What the hell are we doing? If you're a liberal and listening to my show, then you know exactly what I'm saying here. It should freak you out. Because, why? Because the people you love won't always be in charge. Let's talk about this pendulum swing that I was mentioning earlier. Look at where we are. So in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you weren't really allowed to hear from Black folks. I mean, a little bit here, a little bit there, or go earlier, of course, into slavery, when our thoughts and our feelings and our artistry didn't even exist to the majority of the population. We were savages and considered as such. And through long, hard-fought battles, the civil rights era, some legislations, and social attitudes, we crawled our way out of that, and we became very influential in culture in this country. And that is a huge sign of success. We've obviously come a very long way since slavery. Even the fact that I'm on this mic talking to you is proof of that. But instead of working our way to equality, we have worked our way back into inequality. Only we're being elevated to a position that just makes us savages once more. Only this time we're the noble savage. Do you know what the noble savage is? Do you have do you remember that lesson from school? In case some of you don't remember or don't know, let me tell you what the noble savage is. It's actually a literary term. I first learned about it when I was reading Huxley's A Brave New World, but it's a literary term. I'll give you just a textbook from Britannica, textbook definition. Noble savage in literature is an idealized concept of uncivilized man who symbolizes the innate goodness of one not exposed to the corrupting influences of civilization. And here's the Wikipedia definition. A noble savage is a literary stock character who embodies the concept of the indigene, I guess that's like indigenous, outsider, wild human, and other who has not been corrupted by civilization and therefore symbolizes humanity's innate goodness. The noble savage is has become a racist trope for Black people in America. I truly believe this. I believe that there are a lot of people across the political spectrum who are guilty of making noble savages out of us. So instead of being completely discounted as savages, now we're being put in many cases that people like Meghan Markle are being put on a pedestal, not as an equal member of society, but as a noble savage who stands above it all and is unassailable for no other reason than how she looks. That is so dangerous.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
We're not allowed to parse out the truth of her thoughts. Or I'm just using her as an example, but we're not allowed to this is happening all over. We're not allowed to parse out the truth of these folks' thoughts. That immediately, if it exits the lips of a Black American, that it is absolute gospel, absolute truth, is unassailable. There are a lot of white progressives who treat Black people like we are token idols. Race has become the idol. The celebrity class has idolized race. The progressive, extremist progressive left wing has idolized race. I use that because I know there's plenty of liberals out there who don't think this way. And so I'm not talking about you, but they think this way. They've made race an idol and they've made us a token. We can be a token to their tolerance, a token to their open-mindedness, a token to their virtue without having to inconveniently take over all their spaces. You put this token up there and you say, oh no, we don't criticize this person. Because you see, this person is, pick your race, Black, Latino, non-white. We use this term people of color because we're too afraid to just say everybody who's not white. Anybody who's not white, we put them up there. They are unassailable because they are above corruption. They are above corruption simply by virtue of their race. You see, all Black people are better than us. This is a trope we see pop up in Hollywood movies all the time. I know a lot of my Black counterparts complain a lot about how Black people are portrayed in Hollywood as thugs or drug addicts or single moms or folks living in the hood. And that's true. But the other trope that we never talk about is the trope of the noble savage in Hollywood. A great example of it is, what's that golf movie with Will Smith and Matt Damon? The Legend of Bagger Vance. A lot of Bagger Vances running around Hollywood. In Hollywood films, right? It's this noble savage. He doesn't have any desires for himself. He's above corruption. He's above racism. He's above sexism. He's above all of the dirt and the nasty stuff that happens in the country around him. He sort of sits above that. And he's this magical character who comes in and advises the struggling white protagonist who has a heart of gold but isn't quite sure what to do. And this Black person, they don't care. They don't have any needs of their own. They're only there to advise the white person and to make that white person feel better. Bagger Vance, the noble savage. And that guy and gal is everywhere in Hollywood movies. And I hate it. I think it is just as offensive as the concept of being a savage. I think Hollywood has made noble savage, and the political class have made noble savages out of Black people. If we want to be truly equal, we have to be able to stand with our ideas in the arena of ideas. We cannot lean on our race to protect us from criticism, but that's exactly what's happening. And I'm getting to the point where I'm going to tell you why it's dangerous, especially for young women. We cannot let ourselves be noble savages any more than we should let ourselves be savages. We should not tolerate the idea that your race automatically shields you from any type of criticism. And we should not tolerate the idea that criticism equals racism. That is insane. What an absolutely insane idea. None of us will survive that ideology. Not you on the left, not us on the right, and none of y'all independents in the middle who think you're above it all. None of us are going to survive that ideology. It cannot thrive. It will kill us. If we can't call something what it is, we can't call racism what it is when we see it. What's that going to do to the ongoing struggle for true equality, for true tolerance? I mean the real one, not the one that Hollywood is pitching to us every day through their news outlets. What's that going to do? You know, we were having this discussion on my show, Red and Black, and if you haven't gone to find us on YouTube, we do a show every week, Red and Black, for Black conservatives. We talk about news of the week. We joke around. We have a really good time. We don't all think alike, so there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of arguing, and we want to give this new perspective to people that, like, the idea of being Black and conservative, it's not, well, we all just have this one frame of mind, and then we're all basically just different versions of the same person. That's not it at all. So I go find Red and Black Show on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Real Kira Davis, and you can find when I post those. We've got a Twitter account too, which is Red and Black Show. Find us and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. But we had this discussion on this week's episode where we talked about the idea of, if we are going to dilute the meaning of racism to the point where all racism means is gentle criticism or an exchange of opposing ideas, then we are really robbing people like us of the opportunity to really expose racism. So for instance, on the right, as a Black conservative, there are instances where I have faced overt racism. Some of it I can't talk about because it could affect my career, right? Then I will get accused of playing the race card and throwing that down. And some of it people just won't understand because it's one of those things that's like it's people who are like you and have been through it understand, and people who haven't been through it don't even know that it's there. But there are many times when we defend a lot of our conservative ideas against accusations of racism because it's just not true. But there are times when we need to expose racism on this side of the fence, and we are unable to do so because conservatives are so sensitive now about the accusations of racism. The left has watered down the term racism so much that when it does pop up, we have no solid ground to speak from. We are immediately dismissed because it's just too easy to be like, oh, roll our eyes. Oh, another accusation of racism. Like, what happened? Did the guy like ask you to sit down when you wanted to stand up? Is that racism? And I know that this happens on the left too, all the time. I mean, I have liberal friends and Black liberal friends, and we talk about the same things all the time. We have the same experience as we do, where you're in a workplace and you see racism, but you can't necessarily call it out as racism because the word racism has been so diluted to mean just about anything that people don't take you seriously when they should. What part do we play in that as Black folks? Well, of course, we play a part in that because maybe we do throw it around too much. And we enjoy watching white people flounder when it's thrown at them. Guilty. I'm guilty. I do it all the time. I don't do it to conservatives because they get enough of it. I do it to liberals all the time when I'm having like a dumb argument on Twitter. By the way, I don't debate on Twitter. It's pointless. So a lot of times what you're seeing me do over there is snark or asking people. I'm really asking people to live by their own rules. So if you're somebody who calls every instance of pushback at racism, then if you're pushing back against one of my points on Twitter, yeah, sometimes I will pull that out. And it does stop the conversation. It does. Is that right? No, if I was intellectually honest, I guess I probably wouldn't do that. But I like to make people live by their own rules. And if these are the rules you've set up, then you see how this works? How about we just get rid of that stupid rule and we both treat each other like human beings? But right now, what I see is this pendulum has swung so far that Black people are still not being treated like human beings. Now we're being considered as gods or idols in the media. Maybe not in your local area or where you go to school, or if you live in a good old boy town in eastern Texas somewhere. But I'm talking like the general media square, like social media, public, Hollywood, politics. I'm talking about culture. In the cultural arena, we have been made savages once again, only this time we're the noble savage, and it's just as offensive. I cannot tell you how annoyed it makes me, and I apologize I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings because I know this always comes from a place of tenderheartedness and goodheartedness. It annoys me when white Christians tell me their stories about going to a Black church and being so amazed, and it was so loud, and there was so much singing, and everyone was so joyful, and the Holy Spirit was working, and I loved the music, and the pastor was animated, and it was just like, wow, I wish white churches were like this. This is so amazing. I hear you. You're saying you had a different experience. It was great. I think a lot of white people, this is my opinion now. Okay. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, you tell me, you write me at JLTY@protonmail.com. New Addy. JLTY@protonmail.com. You write me if I'm wrong. So this is just my opinion. But I feel like a lot of white Christians, when they say that to me, what they're really saying to me is, look what I did. I went and I experienced this different culture, and I think it's better than mine. And I don't like that either. I don't want you to elevate Black church culture. I love the Black church, but guess what? The Black church has a lot of their own problems that you don't see. So you just see this shiny exterior. You see a lot of people running up and down the aisle and passing out, and you see this very animated preacher, but I see a church that has been rotting from the inside for a long time. We have a lot of issues in our communities. Those people running up and down the aisles, those people hollering and screaming, that is an expression that comes from hundreds of years of oppression. That is a moan. It's a groan. It's not an act. It's not for show. It's not even an affectation. This is a tradition that stems from the time when we weren't even allowed to worship publicly. From a time when our people, when Black people, Black Africans who became Black Americans, when they were, the only hope they had was Jesus. The only hope for freedom they had was God. And their worship was born out of the moans and the groans of the pain of slavery and oppression. And that's what you're looking at when you go to a Black church, because we still suffer in the Black community. Some of those problems are heaped upon us, and some of those problems we heap upon ourselves, but we still have oodles of issues in the Black community, and we are still moaning and groaning to God. So for a lot of white folks, they go in and they see that as something very colloquial and precious, cute, impressive even. But there's so much more behind it. So that bothers me. And the other thing that bothers me is like that it's a big deal. It's totally normal for Black people. It's totally normal for Black people to worship this way. It's not weird to go into a Black church and see all of that stuff going on. So for us, it's normal, and it feels like, I don't know, otherization when folks walk into the church and they get all wide-eyed and then they look around and they go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I don't know. It's a point of annoyance for me as a Christian. It's just another version of a Christian worship service. And it's normal. It's normal. It's not weird. It's normal. It's not normal to you. And I don't know what I'm asking you to do, because what am I asking you to do? Not care at all? Not be impressed at all, or not notice at all? No, I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking you to do. That's your work, I guess. For me, this is just my opinion, but I don't mean to sound too strongly about it, because it's not like it's preventing me from loving any of my white brothers or sisters, but it's just one of those things I find annoying. And so looking at that, it's an example to me of how we can tend to otherize each other by making certain people this version of nobility that we really haven't earned. I think it's just as racist. I think it's just as bigoted. It's still you, not you, dear listener, but the royal you. It's still people not wanting to look at us as just complicated human beings. I would rather see the depiction of the drug addict or gangbanger black guy from the hood in Hollywood, because that guy's got layers. That guy's got a story. He's got a struggle. He's got hopes. He's got dreams, and he's got an attitude. And maybe we don't like that that's a depiction that happens so much that it becomes a stereotype. But at least I can appreciate the layers of that guy. But the Bagger Vances of Hollywood really offend me. There's no layers to that guy. He has no care for. How many more movies do I have to see where these black people, they're fine with being poor. They're fine with living 5 people to a 1-bedroom home. And they invite the rich white person in and teach them about family and teach them about love, what love really is. And their only purpose in the movie is to make this white person feel better or teach them a lesson. And otherwise, they live their lives just fine because, we have each other and that's all we need. There's no layers to those people. Our lives are much more complicated than that. White folks, your lives are much more complicated than y'all just being a bunch of bitter rednecks, right? Same here. I know we have the desire to be idolized. We all do. But to idolize race, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's offensive. Meghan Markle should be able to answer the questions about the, quote, race card, or who called her a racist, or how specifically racism. How can you fix the racism that she's complaining about if you don't even know what it is? We just slap this term racism on anything, and then we can't fix it because it's so vague. There is no fix to a vague problem, which I think is the point a lot of the times.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
Humans cannot resist extremes. And this is why we need each other. This is why on this show I always say I'm a conservative. I'm on the right. I do not want the left to go away. I don't want Democrats to go away. I don't want the left to stop telling me what they think about things. We need each other. I know there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me, but we help pull each other to the center. We help keep this country, this nation centered by having each other. I always use environmentalists as an example, as I was raised by a hippie environmentalist, and of course I'm a capitalist pig now, but I really hate how environmentalism has become like a religion for many people in this country. And I certainly hate how we use the government to force environmental restrictions on people that will make the life of poor people harder and more expensive. We've given them this gift and we want to take it away because it's going to make the ground dirtier. It's going to be harder to clean up. I do believe that those things happen with modernization. And they come easier with modernization, and then you ease the burden on the poverty sector of Americans. Don't make their lives more expensive for your religion. However, there is such a thing as a capitalist pig. And there are companies and corporations and even individuals who do not give a rip about how they treat the environment around them or how they treat their towns and their cities. And they will dump tons of pollution into your rivers if they can get away with it. And they will release tons of pollutants into your air if they can get away with it. Those people, those entities exist too. And guess what? Us capitalists, we have a blind spot. That's confirmation bias, right? Going back to the last episode, we have a confirmation bias that says, well, this is capitalism. And you know what? The environment's going to clean itself up because we don't give the earth enough credit. And also modernization makes for a cleaner environment. I don't believe either of those extremes. I believe that there is something in the middle somewhere. We need each other. We need the environmentalists to pull us out of that capitalist pig mentality where we will just do whatever we want whenever. And we need the capitalists to pull us out of the religion of environmentalism where we put people at the bottom. We need both. We are so wired to hit the extremes. I don't have a spiritual explanation for that other than we're just always searching for meaning, I guess. And that can drive us crazy. It takes, if I've learned anything from doing this show and being a political pundit while doing a show like this, being a conservative political pundit while doing a show like this, it's that it takes an extraordinary amount of energy to make sure you don't pull hard to either extreme. I'm always having to check myself. Always. So my head is in garbage politics all day long, and it can make me angry, and it can make me bitter, and it can make me look at people as ideas instead of individuals. And that's dangerous. Not everybody has the energy for this. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. Those of us that do have the energy need to keep reminding each other that we all need each other. And that equality means that none of us are better than anybody else. Now, this isn't a commentary on what we do to sort of even the scales or whatever. Like, there are policies discussions that go on with that. We touched a little bit on affirmative action on our Red and Black show this week. If you want to go check that out. Have I done affirmative action on this show? I think I have. But yeah, there are discussions to be had, but generally speaking, we're never going to get to a place where we can heal if we're constantly elevating each other to one status or the other. We don't get to be better than anybody else. This is what I talked about in my episode, Becoming What You Hate, warning people against becoming what you hate. True tolerance starts with the knowledge that you are no better than anybody else. You right now, you listening to the sound of my voice. What color are you? Are you white? Are you black? Are you from Japan? I have a following in Egypt. Maybe you're Egyptian. You're no better than anybody. Sorry to break it to you. And your skin color certainly doesn't make you any better. And I would never, ever, ever tolerate a white person telling me that they are better than me and their opinion is unassailable because they are white. I would kick you in the teeth. And I can't even really lift my legs that high anymore, but I would probably be mad enough to do it. I don't know why it's acceptable to tolerate anybody else saying that. We're not doing black people a favor by making noble savages out of ourselves. Meghan Markle, if she's an intelligent woman, she can answer for herself. The idea that she cannot be criticized for the accusation, very serious accusations that she made, that she can't at least be questioned. And you have to be re-educated just for simply saying, I liked a book by a guy who's right of center. What the hell are we doing to ourselves? We put ourselves in danger. And this is what I've really been wanting to get to this entire episode, because this is something that weighs heavily on my heart as the mother of a daughter and as a woman who has mentored young women over the years. The way that we frame race right now, and particularly the way that we frame white people when it comes to race, we're asking people, particularly young women, to ignore their instincts about particularly men in favor of, quote, reorienting their minds towards equality. But what it does is it bleeds young women out of the very necessary instinct they have to alert themselves to danger. Okay, so let me explain what this means. There are a lot of white people. I'm not going to name any names because some of these people are friends and they're my it's personal stories. But I will say that there are a lot of white people that I know who have been so immersed in this message of the noble savage and the idea that they're thinking about Black people is inherently wrong, and so any bad instinct they have about someone who happens to be Black is probably rooted in racism. They've been so immersed in that they forget their common sense, and then they walk into a hood like Gary, Indiana, and want to walk in like they're just a part of the community and can do whatever they want, and that they're not in the murder capital of the world, and that they're not in one of the areas most riddled with gangs. They walk in there like it's fine, like they're in their own neighborhood, like they're in their own suburb, because these are Black people and they're good. And if I feel nervous, it's because I'm racist. If I feel nervous, it's because I don't know any better and I'm the problem. So if I'm going to be walking around this hood and I see a guy coming towards me and he looks like he doesn't have good intentions, I'm just going to stand my ground because I don't want to be perceived as a racist. But guess what? There's so many good Black people in the hood. There's so many good people in the hood. There's a lot of bad Black people in the hood too. But the noble savage idea allows you to believe that there are no bad Black people, so you can waltz through the hood doing whatever you want. Guess what? Your ass is going to get robbed. And it's happened. It's happened to people I know. They knew their instinct, but this happens to women mostly because we tell our girls, now they have this compound message, right? If you always got to be nice. If you're a girl, you got to be nice. You got to be sweet. You got to smile. So you don't want to be the person who's not nice and not smiling and not sweet. That's not very girlish. That's not very feminine. Now you need to ignore your instincts about this man who's walking towards you because he's Black and you don't want to be perceived as a racist. So now you've gone through 12 years of school where this has been beaten into your head, and you're supposed to forget about your womanly intuition that tells you I'm in danger, that the race of this person shouldn't matter. I'm in danger. But now, because we're immersed in this narrative of a noble savage, this racist narrative, now we've gone to the other extreme where we're not even allowed to use our good sense to make judgments about people because we have to judge people based on their race and not on how they make us feel or their character. It's so dangerous. I tell this all the time. All of this social justice stuff, it bleeds young women of their natural instinct. This is a man's world. But what women have to navigate a man's world is our intuition. Women's intuition is not just a cliche. It is real. So a lot of times we are asked to ignore it. Even people like my daughter who is Black. But to see if somebody is walking down the street and it makes her feel nervous, her first instinct is going to be, but he's Black or whatever, Latino or whatever, and I don't want to seem like I'm scared. There are a lot of women who have been the victim of crime because they didn't want to seem like they were racist. That is the God's honest truth. That is the God's honest truth. And I'm sorry that might hurt some people's feelings, but there are a lot of women who feel that way. I tell my daughter all the time, and I don't know how much of a difference I'm going to make because she's indoctrinated into all of this culture on TikTok and at school or wherever she is. I'm only one voice in her life. I'm an influential voice, but I'm only one voice. And I always tell her, if you feel nervous, don't worry about how other people are going to perceive what you're feeling. Cross the street. If your gut is telling you that this man is dangerous, but you don't want to seem like you're not interested in him because he's white or because he's Asian. You don't want to seem like a bigot. Forget about that. Safety first. You can go back if it was a misunderstanding, you can go back later and apologize. See, it's dangerous what we're doing. We're trying to bleed out just simple human nature out of people. I don't want to be I love being right, and I love it when people adore me and say nice things about me, just like any woman in the entertainment industry. I love those things, but I don't want to be your God. I don't want to be your idol. I don't want you to think of me as perfect just because I'm Black. That's just as offensive as you thinking I'm bad just because I'm Black. I'm human. Let me be human. Let me be human with all of the ups and downs and the layers and the complications and the good ideas and the bad ideas and the wrong ideas. Let me be that person. But I don't want to be the person who's better than you. Now, I might be the person who knows more than you on certain issues, and that's fine. Likewise, right? You might know more about, I don't know, finding sea glass at the beach, or you might know more about racing cars or something. Like I can be the person who might have a little more experience on these race discussions that you might want to get advice from. But don't take my advice as gospel, and don't make me your idol. I'm just a person too, struggling through this life. And that is the great lie that I think when it comes to race, the progressive left is asking us to believe. That there are some people who are unassailable, some people who are more equal than others, simply by virtue of how they look. It was a dangerous idea when the white folks did it, and it's just as dangerous if we do it, if we fall into that trap as Black people. I feel like this episode's going to get me into trouble.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
I read this article from Evie Magazine. Y'all read Evie Magazine? I love Evie. I'm trying to get Brittany Martinez, who is one of the editors over there, and she is a model, and she's great on Twitter. I think she's at Britt Martinez on Twitter. Let me look her up real quick. Yeah, she's at Britt Martinez on Twitter. I love her. Evie Magazine is EVIE, and it's an online publication, and it's for young women. It's for, I would say, the 18 to 35-year-old set. But it's from a more modest, I don't want to say conservative, modest point of view. I love it. I love it. It's not written for me, but I read it obsessively, and I'm always tweeting at them obsessively like I'm actually a fan, which is so crazy because I know they're probably like, who's this old lady? Oh, she's always commenting on our articles. But I love it because they talk about challenging things for the for modern women. They don't just make it all a cliche. They talk about the layers and the complications of being a modern woman, and how maybe some of the ideas that we've bought into about what a modern woman looks like, maybe they've been harmful. I'm trying to get Britt Martinez on the show. I want to do a bonus episode with her because Evie posted a fantastic article the other day on Britt did. She posted a great tweet on why don't we tell women about their bodies? Why is it that when you tell women you're not on the birth control pill, which I have real problems with. At my age, I realize now we've been lied to about this pill. I took it for many years, just like most women do. Well, I have a lot of thoughts on the pill and the lies we've been telling young ladies. But she said, when you tell somebody you're not on the pill, they say, well, how do you not get pregnant? And she said, well, why do we not teach women about their bodies anymore? Why do women not know the answer to this question? We've made the pill the cure-all, if you want to say that, cure pregnancy. We've made it the pill. So I'm trying to get Brittany to come on the show because I just love her perspective, and I think we could have an interesting conversation. I want to do like a mini-sode for you guys. Anyways, so hopefully that'll be happening soon. But this article that I read on Evie, again, I can't recommend it enough. It's eviemagazine.com. It's by a woman named Elizabeth Condra, a white woman, and she posted a story called I Was Called a Racist Because of My Stalking Incident. And she talks about how she was a student I guess, a student teacher or tutor at college some years ago, and she had a student who was Black that she was helping, and he basically turned into a stalker. I'm just trying to boil it. It's a lot longer than this. Go read the story if you can find it. It's a lot longer than this. Again, her name is Elizabeth Condra, and the magazine is evmagazine.com. But she talks about how she was tutoring this guy, and he happened to be Black, and he just got super stalkery, like crazy. Like, he would book her last appointment at the end of every day, even if she had nothing going on. Like, if she had no tutoring appointments before that, he would always make sure to book the last one so that he could be her last student. He would try to stay and talk. He would escort her out. He would follow her, a little bit of the ways just to see what direction she was walking in. He'd be standing in front of her office when she got there. If she didn't respond right away to his emails or his calls, he would send harassing emails like, "Where were you?" One day she got a real scare. I think she had like a substitute for her office hours. So someone else came in and filled in for her, and he showed up and she wasn't there, and he was irate. And so the person that filled in for her like texted her, and she was like, "This guy is here and he's being really weird. Like, he's angry. He's yelling at me. He's so mad at you for not showing up." And she got really scared. But then she realized, like, oh, the nerves that I've been feeling this whole time about this guy, like, yeah, there's something wrong with him. So she took the week off, and he sent harassing emails, and he still showed up at her office, and he harassed her colleagues. Where is she? Why isn't she answering my emails? Why isn't she answering my calls? And she had to make some complaints to campus police. And still she thought, well, this will work itself out. And eventually it did. I can't recall. I don't have time to go to the end of the article and see. But somehow it worked out. I think he ended up like getting involved with somebody else and causing a scene. And so then they took care of it. But later on, she was talking to people, and they were like, well, we didn't take your complaints seriously because we thought you were being a racist. They didn't take her complaints of sexual harassment seriously because she was white and he was Black. Do you see how dangerous this is? I've been on the other side of this too. I've told the story about my Black friend who was accused by his white ex-girlfriend of rape. She just wanted to get back at him, and he spent 7 years in prison for it. Totally got railroaded. Totally. So we all know that stuff happens. But it happens the other way too. What if she's telling the truth? How about we stop judging each other on how we look and start judging each other on the veracity of the things we're saying, on the proof, on the facts? How about we start judging each other like that? Because this poor woman was scared. And frankly, she probably didn't go far enough with these complaints because she didn't want to be called a racist. And then her friends are like, oh, well, we didn't take you seriously because we thought you were a racist. How rude is that? And how scary is that? What if that guy did pop off on her one day and this story had a totally different ending? How many people would have to live with the guilt of knowing she told them the truth and they didn't believe her because they chose the idol of race over the idol of gender? Let's stop making idols of each other. There is no inherent nobility in being a woman. There is no inherent nobility in being Black. There is no inherent nobility in being gay. You are not noble for being rich. There is no inherent nobility for being poor. There are bad poor people, and there are bad rich people, and there are good Black people, and there are bad Black people. There are terrible white people, and there are wonderful white people. You do not get to claim the title of good and unassailable because of how you look. We are going down a road that is going to lead to the exact same type of oppression we have been coming out of for the last 200 years. And maybe it will be white people that end up being the oppressed ones. But you know what? I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, it'll be us again, because these things always come back to us. Because look at what I just said. Look at what's happening. We have this newfound social consciousness, and we're all about social justice, and we have this newfound idea of equality. But look at what has happened to us. We've just swung to the other extremism. We're still looking at Black people as stereotypes, as cliches. It's just the opposite. Now we're the, quote, noble savage. Whereas before, we were the savage. Well, both are equally damaging. Why can't people just let us be us? Because the people who do this really don't believe in equality, and they really don't believe that I'm just like them. They really don't. I think that it is a symptom of how they feel in their hearts. And how they feel in their hearts is that they are different from me. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, but they don't look at us as equal. They don't. And that's why it's so easy to fly to that other extremism. It's just finding a new space for that feeling. Instead of a racist, I'm a, quote, anti-racist. But it's still making me make some kind of idol out of you. Whether it's the idol of you being the savage that can't read or write and just supposed to serve me my food, or the idol of you being the noble savage who stands above all of this and who is always good and always right and has all the right advice for me to win that big golf tournament. Thank you, Bagger Vance. We are bleeding the ability to judge character out of each other and replacing it with judging each other based on race. And for, as I just explained, for women, that is the most dangerous thing. We depend on our intuition. Society is trying to take away everything that it means to be a woman these days. Modern society is telling women that our womanly instincts are simply societal constructs and we need to learn to ignore them. No, women's intuition is a thing for a reason. There have been many times in my marriage where, like, my husband is a very intelligent man. And he makes, for the most part, he makes really great decisions for our family. But there have been times when I have said, I don't know why I feel this way, but I think that you shouldn't take this step. I think that we shouldn't do it. And sometimes he's ignored it and we've paid the price. But most of the time he's accepted that my intuition is right here. That's what I have as a woman to navigate this world, is my women's intuition. And we are deliberately telling young women to replace that intuition with a visual representation of what is right and wrong. Don't fall for that, ladies. If you want to cross the street because a guy is coming towards you and he's making you nervous, cross the frickin' street. You can deal with the screams of racism later. 9 times out of 10, he's just a guy walking down the street. But what if you're the 10th? I also listen to so many true crime podcasts as well. I'm like really primed for this crime against women thing example because I listen to so much true crime these days. I go in cycles. I go in cycles with my podcast. So I'm in a true crime cycle right now. It's definitely time to wrap this up. As you can see, it's been I don't know if any of this made sense. Did I make sense at all today? I don't know. I was just talking. Hopefully, I'll go back and listen and see if I can piece together an episode that makes sense to you. Let me know what you think. If you're offended by anything I said, if you want to push back on anything, or if you want to agree, you can write me. Now we have a new address, JLTY@protonmail.com, JLTY@protonmail.com. Write me and tell me what you think. I don't care if it's good or it's bad. I don't need you to make me an idol. I can deal with your criticism. What else do I have? We've got a new contest coming up, and I'm going to post details this week. But we're growing. The show is growing exponentially, and because of that, we may be bumping up against some copyright laws with our theme music soon. So to avoid that, we need to have our own theme song. So I'm holding a contest for you musicians and songwriters out there. If you have something you've already written that you think would be appropriate, or you want to compose something specifically for the show, hit me up at JLTY@protonmail.com. Send your entry in, and you could be eligible to win $150 cash. Not just that, however. You will also get an exclusive release of your single on FCB Records and the Orchard Sony Music. That's a big deal with Sony Music. They will distribute your single. So that's kind of cool. So if you want to throw your hat in the ring and show me a theme song, I'd be thrilled to hear it. So again, that's JLTY@protonmail.com. And you can do a full song as long as it's something that we can pull out 20 or 30 seconds of, or you can just do that 20 or 30-second song. But maybe you want to do a full song because you're going to get a release. You're going to get an official release for your song. What else do I have? Please join me over at davisnation.locals.com, where we're having conversations, book club, Zoom meetings, bonus episodes of JLTY, fascinating conversations, good people. Join our growing community over there. It's safe. There's no censorship over there. That's why I like it. For instance, we had a conversation the other day that I could never have, even on this show. Even on this show, I could never have this conversation because I would pay for it with my advertisers. So, and it's not like super salacious or anything, but it's just a subject that is too sensitive to trust to the current mood of social media, so to speak. So we're doing that over there. That's been great. Again, Red and Black on YouTube. Find us, like us, subscribe. Appreciate that. Follow me on Twitter at Real Kira Davis if you dare. That's a political account though, so you're going to be watching me snark politically for most of the time. So don't, if you're not interested in seeing me do that. And I think, yeah, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. I'm everywhere. Look me up. You know where to find me. All right, guys, listen to me. Every once in a while, just stop and listen to yourself. I'll talk to you next time.
The FCB Radio Network. First class broadcasting worldwide.